Mr. Mahaveer Singhvi is an Indian Foreign Service officer of 99 batch, and he has served in various positions in Ministry of External Affairs, served as Joint Secretary Counter-Terrorism, Joint Secretary Central Europe, Director of SARC, BIMSTEC and Border Connectivity, Director E and South Asia, Director LAC, Director Multilateral Economic Relations, and Deputy Secretary of Technical Cooperation. Mr. Singhvi is currently the Joint Secretary of Counter-Terrorism in the Ministry of External Affairs at Government of India. I would extend a warm welcome to him on behalf of the Global Counter-Terrorism Council, sir. And I would like to invite him to deliver his keynote address for today's conference. Welcome, sir, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Amit. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to participate in this international conference organized by Global Counterterrorism Council. I was not well. I've just recovered from COVID, so I would try and be a little brief on my remarks, but we'll try and cover what we do diplomatically. Since I handle a lot of the joint working groups, I had Indian delegation in our interactions with the foreign countries, particularly on the joint working group front. As have been talked about by various scholars and the people who addressed the conference earlier, we live in a time where our societies face new threats and challenges every day. In particular, the constantly evolving threat from terrorism is our shared worry. It is the single biggest threat, not only to the international peace and security, but also to development. Today, terrorist entities have links and operate across borders, building networks, raising funds in various ways, propagating their ideologies of hate, recruiting from foreign lands, sourcing arms and weapons from distant providers and smugglers, exploiting modern communication technologies that dissolve distances. They are also able to select targets of their choosing in countries of their choosing cross-border, often with the help of state agencies, and inflict terror on innocent people. Ironically, the very tools which facilitate economic development, that is internet, telecommunications, etc., are now being used by terrorists for perpetrating their dastardly objectives. The COVID-19 pandemic has expanded opportunities for terrorist organizations across the world to exploit vulnerabilities of communities. They are attempting to exploit the financial and emotional distress to disturb the cohesiveness of societies. The increased presence of people online and on social media has been targeted by terrorists to disseminate misinformation through hate speeches, fake news, and doctored videos. The intent has been to entice and establish links with vulnerable individuals and recruit them in their cadres. To respond to these challenges, India has undertaken various efforts, both operationally, which you have heard, and also on diplomatic side. I would primarily focus on the diplomatic side, particularly the principles which we employ and the efforts which we have taken so far, as far as the countering terrorism on the diplomatic front is concerned. As you all know, India has always been at the forefront of global efforts to counter terrorism. The issue of countering terrorism finds prominent mention in our bilateral and multilateral meetings at all levels and in our joint statements issued there. India has consistently reiterated its commitment to combating terrorism globally and has strongly condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, which is a principle recognized by the UN. In 1996, India took the initiative to pilot the Draft Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism with the objective of providing a comprehensive legal framework for combating terrorism. India's counter-terrorism doctrine, as I said, is based on the principle recognized by the United Nations that terrorism in all its forms and manifestation is a criminal activity and is not justified on any ground, be it political, religious, ethnic, or social. India's call for zero tolerance to terrorism, rejection of any justification for any act of terror, delinking terror from religion, and need for all countries to unite in the fight against terrorism has found greater acceptance among the international community. We have also signed and ratified all the major conventions and protocols on terrorism, adopted by the United Nations and are part of all major global initiatives in this regard. As you all know, terrorism emanating from territories under the control of our Western neighbor continues to be a core concern for India. India has consistently stressed in our diplomatic efforts the need for this country to take credible, irreversible, and verifiable action to end cross-border terrorism against India and dismantle terrorist infrastructure in the territory under its control. Till then, we have also conveyed that India will continue to take firm and decisive steps to respond to all attempts at cross-border terrorist infiltration. This approach is also reflected in India's firm and immediate response to cross-border terror attacks in Pathankot, Uri, and Pulwama through counterterrorism, surgical strikes, and preemptive counterterrorism airstrikes against terrorist camps and launch pads. In our diplomatic efforts, we have also consistently raised the issue of this Western neighbors' continued support to cross-border terrorism and terrorist infiltration in bilateral, regional, and multilateral fora. As a result of that, there is an enhanced concern in the international community at terrorism emanating from this country, including the continuing activities of internationally designated terrorist entities and individuals such as Jamaatul Dawa, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, and their leaderships. Many terrorist entities and individuals who find shelter in our Western neighborhood are engaged in terrorism against India have been proscribed by the United Nations, the European Union, and other countries. Our major partner countries have also called upon our Western neighbor to ensure that no territory under its control is used to launch terrorist attack and to expeditiously bring to justice the perpetrators of cross-border terrorist attacks in India, including the 2611 Mumbai and 2016 Pathankot. These kind of statements often find mention in our joint statement issued after the counterterrorism working group meetings and other important meetings at bilateral level. In our engagement with the international community, we have emphasized that terrorism can only be defeated collectively, and all countries should work together for rooting out terrorist safe havens and infrastructure, disrupting terrorist networks and their financing channel, and halting cross-border movement of terrorists. Highlighting the importance of combating terrorism in a comprehensive and sustained manner, we have stressed the need for concerted action against all terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, ISIS, JEM, LET, Hizbul Mujahideen, and their affiliates and proxies. As a victim of terrorism for more than 3 decades, India has also strongly advocated for strengthening multilateral efforts to fight terrorism and strengthening the UN counterterrorism architecture led by the United Nations Office on Counterterrorism by providing it adequate financial resources and support. India also participated in the Counterterrorism Week organized by the UNOCT and organized a side event on terrorist financing threats and trends in the post-COVID-19 landscape, with a particular focus on the misuse of digital space for terrorist financing purpose. The event highlighted the potential risk associated with virtual assets and the new financial instruments. India has also supported the UN efforts to strengthen capacity of member states by contributing more than $1 million to support various UN initiatives since 2018. India is a member of advisory board of the UN Counterterrorism Center. India is also a member of the group of Friends of Victims of Terrorism, which was launched in June 2019 and has participated in its ministerial meeting in 2019 and 2020. India has also fully leveraged its current non-permanent membership of the UN Security Council by sensitizing the Council on the issue of terrorism and encouraging it to send strong messages to those supporting terrorism. In January 2021, speaking at an open debate in the UNSC on counterterrorism, the External Affairs Minister called for greater commitment of international community towards zero tolerance for terrorism, effective action by member states, and proposed an 8-point action plan to counter terrorism, which include the need to summon the political will to combat terrorism, no double standards, terrorists are terrorists, there are no good or bad ones. He also said that there should not be any politicization of the UN sanction regime, there should not be blocks or holds based on listing requests without any reason. There must be objective enlisting and delisting of terrorists by the UN. And he also called upon the countries to discourage exclusivist thinking and facilitate radicalization, recognizing the linkages of terrorism to organized crime, and supporting and strengthening anti-money laundering and counter-terror financing frameworks such as FATF, and strengthening the multilateral counterterrorism architecture under the UN framework. During India's presidency of the United Nations Security Council, in the month of August 2021, India spearheaded several initiatives on counterterrorism. The Council adopted 4 press statements strongly condemning activities of terrorist groups, including recent attacks in Afghanistan. In its presidential statement adopted by consensus, the UN Security Council deplored the terrorist threat to maritime security. On August 19, 2021, India organized a special ministerial level meeting on the threat posed by ISIL or Daesh, highlighting the rise of ISIL's regional affiliates in several countries of Africa as well as in Afghanistan. In the press release issued thereafter, the UNSC underscored the importance of a holistic approach to counter-terrorism and expressed concern over increasing use of ICT and emerging technologies by ISIL. On 29 August 2021, the Security Council adopted a resolution demanding that Afghan territory is not used to threaten or attack any country, or to shelter or train terrorists, or to plan or finance terrorist attacks against any country. The resolution also referred to individuals and entities designated under the 1267 Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee, which included Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. India is also a member of the Counterterrorism Committee of the United Nations Security Council. The Counterterrorism Committee plays a very important role in the UN-led efforts to prevent and counter terrorism by fortifying the institutional, legislative, and policy framework of member states. Over the last few years, India has also pursued designations and listing of terrorists in the 1267 Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee. Due to our concerted efforts, Masood Azhar, the leader of Jaish-e-Mohammed, was listed as a terrorist by the Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee in May 2019. The UN also adopted a global counterterrorism strategy in 2006. This is a unique global instrument to enhance national, regional, and international effort to counter terrorism. During the recently concluded 7th review of the global counterterrorism strategy, India participated proactively and contributed constructively to the negotiation and to further strengthen the regime. India is also a member of the FATF since 2010 and has been regularly participating in the FATF plenary meetings. India is a member of 2 of the FATF-style regional bodies, namely the Eurasian Group on Money Laundering and the Asia-Pacific Group. India is also a founding member of the Global Counterterrorism Forum since its launch in 2011 and regularly participates in its meeting. India has been actively participating in major international seminars and conferences on the subject of counterterrorism, including at the Prime Minister and the ministerial level, and sensitizing the world community about our concern on terror threats and also gathering support for our position on the issue. Honorable Prime Minister attended the Leaders' Dialogue to discuss strategic response to terrorist and extremist narratives on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2019. While speaking at the G20 Hamburg Summit in 2017, Prime Minister also mentioned a 10-point action agenda for the world community to counter terrorism through greater contribution, coordination, and effective implementation. We have also participated in the ministerial conference, which is called as No Money for Terror conference, held in Paris and Melbourne in 2018 and 19. We have offered to host the 3rd No Money for Terror conference. It was to be hosted in 2020, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it couldn't take place. We're planning to have it this year, later in the month of November or December, subject to the COVID restrictions. At the regional level, India has also been actively involved in various efforts to counter terrorism. India participates in the meetings of BRICS and BIMSTEC Joint Working Group on Counterterrorism. India recently hosted the 6th meeting of BRICS Counterterrorism Working Group virtually. The main outcome of the meeting was the finalization of the BRICS Counterterrorism Action Plan, which was initiated by India and which contained specific measures to implement the BRICS counterterrorism strategy, which was adopted by the BRICS leader in 2020. The action plan was adopted at the BRICS National Security Advisors meeting held on 24 August 2021 and was also endorsed at the summit level meeting. Cooperation in counterterrorism is also an area of high priority in the BIMSTEC framework. India is the lead country for counterterrorism and transnational crime issues in BIMSTEC and has been regularly participating in the meetings of the BIMSTEC Joint Working Group and its six subgroups. The BIMSTEC Convention on Cooperation in Combating International Terrorism, Transnational Organized Crime, and Illicit Drug Trafficking entered into force in March 2021. The BIMSTEC Convention on Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters has also been finalized and is ready for signature, and these instruments would further enhance counterterrorism cooperation amongst the BIMSTEC countries. India is also an active participant in the counterterrorism mechanism set up by regional organizations such as ASEAN Regional Forum and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure known as SCO-REDS. As the previous speaker mentioned, to strengthen our bilateral joint working group on counterterrorism with important countries, we've established joint working group on counterterrorism with many of the important countries. As of now, we have 26 joint working group bilaterally, and also we have a joint working group with the European Union, and we participate in the joint working group meetings of the BRICS and BIMSTEC. All concerned agencies, departments, and ministries dealing with counterterrorism issues are represented in these meetings, presenting a whole of government approach in countering terrorism. The joint working group meetings provides a forum for countering terrorism-related cooperation, enabling sharing of information and experience, sharing of terrorist threat assessment, and also strengthening capacities, expediting mutual legal assistance, and facilitating agency-to-agency cooperation. Last year, we had bilateral joint working group meetings with all the important countries, including Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Russia, UK, USA. We have joint working group established across the world, in fact, and all major countries are partners in this fight against terrorism. We have also hosted the first counterterrorism working group meeting with Maldives in 2021, and we are also trying to have now meetings with more countries. The legal framework for combating transnational crimes and international terrorism includes extradition treaties, mutual legal assistance, memorandum of understanding, agreements on security cooperation. Till date, India has signed 50 extradition treaties and extradition arrangement with another 12 countries. As of August 2020, agreements on mutual legal assistance in criminal matters were in force with 43 countries, and we have 28 bilateral agreements (MOU) on security cooperation. India's Financial Intelligence Unit has also signed various agreements with its counterpart agencies. There are almost 47 such agreements with its counterpart agencies. Such treaties and agreements are signed with the view to securing cooperation and assistance to enable India to counter terrorism, countering organized crimes, drug trafficking, money laundering, counterfeiting of Indian currency, notes, etc. Such agreements are also helpful in facilitating cooperation in training, capacity building, and agency level interaction. I think I have summarized the various efforts at diplomatic level taken by India, and I think with this I would conclude my remarks here. Thank you once again for inviting me. This was just a broad overview of what we do in terms of our diplomatic outreach and counterterrorism diplomacy. Thank you, Amit, for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Singhvi, for delivering a lecture and enlightening us about the various steps taken by the government to counter the terrorism. Indeed, we need a very, very comprehensive strategy, not only at the government level, but it has to be inclusive of all the state governments. Even we might have to include the social sector people into this, and so that a comprehensive strategy can be worked out. And I would like to extend a warm thanks to you on behalf of the Global Counter-Terrorism Council. Indeed, it has been a pleasure for us and honor for us to have you here. Thank you, sir.